What if I told you that gray hair is not always a sign of aging? What if the silver strands appearing in your mirror are not proof that your body has given up, but instead a warning that something deep inside your biology is missing? Most people believe once hair turns gray, the story is over. The color is gone forever, the follicles are dead, and nothing can bring it back except dye. But the newest scientific discoveries are revealing something shocking. In many cases, the system that creates your natural hair color is still alive. It is not destroyed. It is simply running without the materials it needs to function. And that changes everything. For years, people blamed stress for gray hair. Others blamed genetics and accepted it as fate. But researchers are now uncovering a much more complex picture, one that points toward nutrition, cellular signaling, oxidative damage, and hidden deficiencies that silently interfere with the color-producing machinery inside your scalp. What makes this even more surprising is that some of these mechanisms may actually be reversible under the right conditions. Think about your hair follicle like a factory. When you are young, that factory works day and night producing pigment that gives every strand its color. The workers are active, the supply trucks arrive on time, and the machines run smoothly. But over time, something changes. Most people assume the factory shuts down forever. In reality, the building often stays intact. The machines are still there. Even the workers remain inside. The real problem is that the deliveries stop arriving. The nutrients, protective compounds, and cellular signals needed for pigment production begin disappearing little by little until the system can no longer operate properly. The result? Hair grows without color. Inside each follicle are highly specialized cells responsible for creating melanin, the pigment that determines whether your hair appears black, brown, blonde, or red. These cells depend on a reserve supply of stem cells that constantly activate and mature throughout your life. For decades, scientists believed those stem cells simply died off with age, but recent discoveries are challenging that idea completely. Researchers found that in many gray follicles, the stem cells are still present. They are not gone, they are trapped. Imagine workers locked inside a break room, unable to reach their stations. The equipment still exists, but no production can happen because the activation signal never arrives. That is exactly what appears to happen inside graying follicles. The stem cells lose their mobility, remain stuck in inactive zones, and stop transforming into pigment-producing cells. The structure survives, but the communication system fails. This is where the conversation becomes incredibly important, because a stalled system is very different from a destroyed one. A broken signal pathway may potentially be restarted, and scientists are now focusing intensely on the biological triggers that control whether those cells remain inactive or begin functioning again. One of the biggest enemies of this process is oxidative stress. Every single day, your body is exposed to free radicals generated from pollution, processed food, cigarette smoke, UV radiation, chronic inflammation, poor sleep, and even normal metabolism. Over time, these unstable molecules attack the cells inside your follicles, the same way rust slowly damages metal. The melanocytes become weaker, slower, and less efficient at producing pigment. But here is the key detail most people never hear. Oxidative damage is not instant. It accumulates gradually. That means slowing it down or reducing it may also slow the progression of gray hair itself. The second major factor is nutrient depletion. Producing melanin is not simple. It requires a chain of reactions involving vitamins, minerals, enzymes, and signaling molecules working together with precision. If even one critical nutrient is missing, the chain begins breaking apart. Your follicles may still have the ability to create color, but without the raw materials, production stops. This is why deficiencies in vitamin B12, copper, iron, folate, zinc, and vitamin D repeatedly appear in research involving premature graying. Many people walk around for years with hidden deficiencies without realizing it, because standard blood tests rarely check deeply enough to detect functional shortages before symptoms appear. And the frightening part is this. Sometimes, gray hair becomes the visible clue that the body has been struggling silently long before other health symptoms arrive. But the most exciting discovery of all involves the stem cells themselves. Scientists identified certain plant compounds capable of supporting the signaling pathways that help these dormant cells activate again. One antioxidant in particular has captured global attention because of what researchers observed during laboratory studies involving age-related graying. And when you hear what happened next, you may never look at gray hair the same way again. The discovery that stunned researchers did not come from a cosmetic company or a miracle hair product advertisement. It came from a laboratory where scientists were studying the exact biological signals responsible for keeping hair follicles producing color as they age. What they uncovered opened an entirely new conversation about gray hair, not as a permanent shutdown, but as a system that may be capable of restarting under the right conditions. In one of the most talked about studies in recent years, researchers observed aging follicles that normally would have lost pigment over time. Instead of focusing on dyes or external treatments, they targeted the cellular communication pathways inside the follicle itself. Their attention centered on a powerful plant compound called luteolin, a naturally occurring antioxidant found in foods many people already eat without realizing its significance. The results surprised even the scientists. Follicles exposed to adequate levels of this compound maintained their pigmentation far longer than expected. In some cases, pigment activity returned in follicles that had already begun turning gray. This happened because the compound appeared to support the signaling environment required for melanocyte stem cells to stay active and mobile, instead of becoming trapped in inactive compartments inside the follicle. To understand why this matters, imagine once again that the follicle is a factory. The workers are still employed, but the internal communication system has broken down. Nobody tells the workers when to begin production. Luteolin appeared to help restore those signals, allowing the cells responsible for color to return to work. Now, this does not mean eating one vegetable will magically erase gray hair overnight. Biology never works that way. But what this research demonstrated is something far more important. The machinery for pigmentation may remain alive far longer than previously believed. And that means your daily habits matter more than most people realize. The modern lifestyle quietly creates the perfect environment for premature graying. Chronic stress, processed foods, poor sleep, inflammatory diets, alcohol, smoking, and nutrient-poor eating patterns all increase oxidative pressure on the follicle. Every year, the system becomes slightly weaker until pigment production begins fading strand by strand. But stress alone is not the villain people think it is. For years, headlines claimed stress directly causes gray hair. The truth is more complicated. Scientists analyzing individual hair strands discovered that grayness often appeared during periods of emotional pressure, but something even more fascinating also occurred. In some individuals, color partially returned after the stressful period ended. That means stress-related graying may not always be permanent. The explanation appears to involve biological depletion rather than irreversible destruction. During prolonged stress, the body burns through nutrients faster, increases inflammation, elevates oxidative stress, disrupts hormone balance, and weakens cellular repair systems. The follicle becomes deprived of the support it needs, and pigment production slows or pauses. When the stress burden decreases and the body regains nutritional balance, some follicles appear capable of resuming normal activity. This changes the entire conversation from hopelessness to possibility. Now, before anyone misunderstands this, genetics still play a role. Some people are genetically predisposed to earlier graying. Age-related changes also matter. But genetics are not the full story. Two people can share similar family histories while experiencing completely different timelines, depending on nutrition, inflammation levels, environmental exposure, and overall metabolic health. That is why researchers are increasingly looking at gray hair as a biological indicator rather than simply a cosmetic issue. And once you understand that, the next question becomes obvious. What exactly are the follicles missing? The answer begins with nutrients most people never think about. Vitamin B12 is one of the biggest examples. This vitamin plays a direct role in cellular energy production and neurological function. But it is also deeply connected to pigment formation inside the follicle. Deficiency can quietly develop for years, especially in people eating plant-based diets or those with digestive absorption problems. Hair often begins graying prematurely, long before severe symptoms appear elsewhere. Copper is another overlooked factor. Without copper, the enzyme responsible for creating melanin cannot function efficiently. You could have healthy follicles, active stem cells, and adequate protein intake. But if copper levels are low, the pigment production process stalls. Iron matters too, especially ferritin, the storage form of iron. Many individuals technically fall within normal laboratory ranges, while still lacking enough stored iron to fully support hair follicle function. Low ferritin repeatedly appears in people experiencing premature graying and hair quality decline. Then there is vitamin D, zinc, folate, and antioxidant compounds that protect the follicle environment from chronic oxidative damage. Together, these nutrients act like maintenance crews, keeping the entire pigment factory operational. And here's what most people never realize. You cannot fix years of depletion with random supplements taken blindly. In fact, taking the wrong supplements without testing can create even bigger imbalances. Too much copper can be harmful. Excess zinc can interfere with other minerals. This is why proper blood testing becomes one of the most important steps in understanding why gray hair may be appearing earlier than expected. But the real breakthrough is not only about identifying deficiencies. It is about learning which foods naturally support the pathways researchers now believe are connected to maintaining pigmentation itself. The most fascinating part of this entire conversation is that the foods attracting scientific attention are not rare, expensive, or hidden inside luxury supplements. Many of them are ordinary foods sitting in grocery stores every single day. The difference is that researchers are no longer looking at them simply as healthy. They are examining how specific compounds inside these foods interact directly with the biological pathways connected to hair, pigmentation. And once you understand how these foods work, you begin to realize something powerful. Your hair follicles are not isolated structures sitting on your scalp disconnected from the rest of your body. They are deeply dependent on circulation, inflammation levels, nutrient availability, hormone balance, and cellular protection happening internally every hour of the day. Let's begin with the food that created the most discussion in recent research: celery. Most people think of celery as little more than a low-calorie snack. But scientists became interested in it because it contains one of the richest dietary sources of luteolin, the antioxidant compound linked to maintaining the signaling pathways involved in melanocyte stem cell activity. These stem cells are responsible for helping follicles continue producing pigment rather than growing gray strands. What makes luteolin so interesting is not only its antioxidant power. It appears to support the chemical communication needed for these pigment-producing stem cells to stay active and mobile, instead of becoming trapped in inactive states. Researchers studying this pathway found that oxidative stress gradually weakens these signals over time. When the signaling deteriorates, the stem cells stop transitioning into active melanocytes, and pigmentation declines. Luteolin appears to help preserve part of this communication network. This is why many experts now recommend including raw or lightly cooked celery regularly, rather than relying only on supplements. Heat can significantly reduce some of the active compounds, which is why preparation matters more than most people realize. But celery is only the beginning. Broccoli has also gained attention because it delivers both luteolin and another powerful compound called sulforaphane. Sulforaphane activates one of the body's most important antioxidant defense systems, often referred to as NRF2. Think of NRF2 like an internal repair and protection switch. When activated properly, it helps cells defend themselves against oxidative stress and inflammation. For hair follicles, that matters enormously. Remember, oxidative damage is one of the 3 core mechanisms associated with graying. The more oxidative pressure accumulates inside follicular tissue, the harder it becomes for melanocytes to function properly. Sulforaphane helps strengthen the body's ability to neutralize some of that damage before it overwhelms the system. But there is a detail most people completely miss. The way broccoli is prepared dramatically changes how much sulforaphane your body actually receives. Boiling destroys key enzymes required to activate the compound properly. Light steaming for only a few minutes preserves far more biological activity. Even the stems matter. In fact, the stems often contain higher concentrations of beneficial compounds than the florets people usually throw away. Then come eggs, one of the most nutrient-dense foods for supporting hair biology. Eggs provide highly absorbable vitamin B12, along with biotin and sulfur-containing amino acids necessary for keratin structure. Keratin is the protein framework of your hair itself. Many people associate biotin only with hair growth supplements, but the bigger story involves how multiple nutrients work together. B12 supports the cellular energy systems follicles rely on. Sulfur amino acids help maintain hair structure. The yolk also contains additional micronutrients involved in tissue repair and hormone support. And this is important. Removing the yolk removes many of the nutrients the follicle actually needs. For people following plant-based diets, B12 becomes one of the hardest nutrients to maintain adequately without supplementation. This is one reason some individuals develop premature graying despite eating otherwise healthy diets. Next to oysters, one of the richest natural sources of copper and zinc. Copper plays a direct role in activating tyrosinase, the enzyme required for melanin production itself. Without sufficient copper, pigment synthesis slows dramatically, regardless of how healthy the rest of the follicle appears. Zinc also matters because it supports cellular repair, immune regulation, and antioxidant defense systems throughout the body. Together, copper and zinc form a critical partnership in maintaining healthy follicular function. If oysters are unavailable, nutrient-dense organ meats such as liver provide many of the same minerals alongside iron and B12, all of which repeatedly appear in research involving premature graying. Then there is wild salmon, which supports several pathways simultaneously. It provides omega, 3 fatty acids, vitamin D, and additional B12. Omega-3s help reduce inflammation surrounding the follicle, while vitamin D appears closely linked to melanocyte activity and follicular health. Low vitamin D levels consistently appear in populations experiencing early graying, yet millions of people remain deficient without realizing it. But here's where things become even more interesting. Scientists are now recognizing that these foods may work far better together than individually because many of their compounds interact synergistically inside the body. Certain antioxidants amplify one another. Some nutrients improve absorption of others. Specific flavonoids appear to strengthen shared protective pathways when consumed together rather than separately, which means building the right combinations may matter just as much as the foods themselves. One of the biggest reasons people become frustrated trying to improve their hair health is because they focus only on what they eat, while ignoring whether their body can actually absorb those nutrients properly. This is where the conversation around gray hair becomes much deeper than cosmetic appearance. Your follicles are not simply asking whether nutrients entered your mouth. They are asking whether those nutrients successfully traveled through digestion into the bloodstream and finally reached the cells responsible for producing pigment. And for many people, that journey is quietly failing. Before we talk about the remaining foods connected to healthy pigmentation, you need to understand something critical. A person can eat a nutrient-rich diet and still remain biologically deficient. Digestive disorders, chronic inflammation, poor gut health, long-term acid reflux medications, intestinal damage, and absorption problems can prevent the body from extracting what it needs from food. This explains why some individuals seem to do everything right, yet continue developing premature gray hair and other deficiency symptoms. Your follicles depend on delivery systems. If absorption is compromised, the supply chain never arrives. Now let's continue with the foods researchers and clinicians are paying attention to. Dark leafy greens deserve far more respect than they usually receive. Spinach, kale, arugula, Swiss chard, and similar greens provide folate, iron, magnesium, and multiple antioxidant compounds involved in cellular repair and melanin synthesis. Folate plays an especially important role because it supports methylation reactions required for producing melanin precursors inside the follicle. Without enough folate, pigment production pathways become less efficient over time. But there is another important detail many people overlook. The iron found in plant foods is harder for the body to absorb compared to iron from animal sources. That is why combining leafy greens with vitamin C-rich foods can dramatically improve absorption. Something as simple as lemon juice, tomatoes, or bell peppers eaten alongside greens may significantly increase how much iron actually enters circulation. And iron matters more than most people realize. Low ferritin levels, even before full anemia develops, are repeatedly associated with hair issues, including shedding, thinning, and premature graying. Yet many people never test ferritin specifically Standard blood panels often appear normal, while iron stores remain too low to optimally support follicles. Then comes sunflower seeds, another surprisingly powerful addition to a follicle-supportive diet. These seeds provide pantothenic acid, also known as vitamin B5, along with vitamin E and protective fats. Pantothenic acid participates in metabolic processes connected to pigment production, while vitamin E helps shield cells from oxidative damage. Remember, oxidative stress slowly weakens melanocytes over years. Supporting antioxidant defenses consistently matters far more than chasing overnight results. Green tea is another example of how preparation can completely change biological impact. Green tea contains catechins, especially EGCG, compounds known for powerful antioxidant and anti-inflammatory properties. Researchers believe these compounds may help reduce oxidative stress inside follicular tissue and support healthier cellular environments overall. But most people accidentally destroy much of the benefit without realizing it. Boiling water damages delicate catechins before they can even be absorbed efficiently. Extremely hot brewing temperatures reduce the activity of the compounds researchers are actually interested in. Even adding dairy milk may interfere with absorption because milk proteins bind to catechins and reduce bioavailability. Small details matter when biology is involved. Now, here's something most people never hear from their doctor. Certain plant compounds appear to work synergistically together, amplifying their protective effects beyond what they achieve individually. For example, luteolin pairs especially well with quercetin, another flavonoid found in onions, apples, and capers. Together, they help support antioxidant defense pathways connected to cellular protection. This means meals combining foods like broccoli, onions, peppers, and leafy greens may create stronger biological effects than isolated foods eaten separately. The body operates through networks, not isolated reactions. But even when people understand the nutritional side, they still make several major mistakes. The first mistake is treating all gray hair as identical. Gray hair appearing naturally in the 60s through gradual aging may behave very differently from premature graying developing in the 30s or 40s. Deficiency-driven and oxidative stress-related graying appears more responsive to biological correction than strongly genetic late-life graying. The second mistake is supplementing blindly. This is incredibly common and potentially harmful. People often start taking random supplements after watching social media videos without testing their actual levels first. But more is not always better. Excess copper can become toxic. High zinc intake can interfere with copper balance. Oversupplementation may create entirely new problems while failing to correct the original issue. Testing before supplementing is one of the smartest decisions a person can make. The third mistake is checking the mirror incorrectly. Most people expect already grown gray hair to suddenly darken. That usually does not happen. Any biological improvement occurs at the follicle level, meaning changes appear first in new growth near the root. If pigmentation begins returning, it happens gradually and often subtly at the scalp line first. And the fourth mistake may be the biggest of all. People spend hundreds of dollars on shampoos, oils, masks, and topical products, expecting them to repair a process occurring deep inside the follicle, where blood supply, nutrient delivery, and cellular signaling determine pigmentation. External products may improve appearance temporarily, but they cannot replace internal biological support. The follicle is fed from within. Here's the truth most people never hear. Gray hair is not always your body surrendering to age. In many cases, it is your body sending a signal that something deeper needs attention. The follicles often still exist. The pigment cells may still be alive. The machinery may still be waiting for the right environment to function again. That is why this journey is not about chasing miracle cures or overnight transformations. It is about rebuilding the internal conditions your follicles depend on every single day, reducing oxidative stress, correcting hidden deficiencies, supporting circulation, improving sleep, lowering chronic inflammation, and giving your body the nutrients required to restart processes that may have been struggling silently for years. But there is one thing you must understand before expecting results. Hair changes slowly, very slowly. Your follicles need time to recover, activate, and produce new strands. That is why experts recommend at least 90 days before evaluating any real progress. The changes, if they happen, begin at the root line in new growth, not in the old gray strands already visible in the mirror. And sometimes the smallest improvements are the most important signs. A darker root, fewer new gray strands, stronger texture, healthier shine. These are signals that the biological environment inside the follicle may be improving. The most powerful part of all this is realizing you are not completely powerless. Your daily habits influence your biology more than you think. Every meal, every night of sleep, every nutrient, every stressful season, every healthy decision quietly shapes what happens inside those follicles. So do not think of this as fighting aging. Think of it as supporting the systems your body was designed to maintain. If you found this video helpful, subscribe now, like the video, and share it with someone worried about premature gray hair. And in the comments, tell me which nutrient or food surprised you the most. Your story may help someone else begin their journey too.